Hi, I'm Anatole, and this is my reaction video to Neon Genesis Evangelion Season 1, Episode 10, titled The Megma Driver. This is, Megma Diver. And this is one of the examples of a title that's the same in both the Netflix version and the version that you can find before Netflix. My understanding is it had to do with translation. One title comes from a literal translation, and the second title is more of a looser translation. But here it's the same, Megma Diver. It's scored 7.6 on IMDb, which is kind of low, so I'm curious to see why this scored a little low. I remember one of the earlier episodes also had a weaker score. I can't remember what the episode was, and I found that I could see why it got a lower score, but that I enjoyed it. So maybe I'm just such a fan of the showrunner for the show that regardless of whatever flaws are in the episode, I just like the style enough that I tend to overlook the flaws of the episode. And I'm just trying to find who the showrunner is. I want to get that clear. Oh yeah, Hideaki Anno. And so I guess that's pretty much all I got for my introduction. So please join me after the title scroll, and then we will get into my reaction to Megma Diver. This guy is bad news. Run while you can, ladies. I'm gonna guess something happens on the scuba diving trip. I didn't know she was into him. Plus, she's a little young, isn't she? She's not wrong, you know. You need to get time for R&R. I agree with that. She's not wrong. Yeah, I was about to say, it's totally an un-Japanese attitude. I can see how they could use Asuka to criticize Japanese culture in ways. Fan service! He may be a boring guy, but this is kind of an inappropriate conversation to have with A, a teenager, B, your coworker. I don't have a C. I'm a little lost. Are they diving into a volcano? Like not active volcano, but a lake inside the volcano? Or... Hey, so her boobs got bigger. Everything got bigger. There we are with Rei creating jealousy with Asuka again. Is there going to be the moment where Rei volunteers for something and Asuka lets her instead of taking the bait? Seems like they're kind of setting that up. And then Rei gets killed, and so Asuka feels grief for that, feels guilty for that. Really? So she's willing to just throw these lives away? It's a bug hunt! They can't go that easily. Right, we all knew it was going to happen. We knew something was going to happen. It's hatched from its egg, ready to go. Uh-oh, that's not a good sign. He's living it, living the life. Boy, even when he wins, he doesn't win. And that's the end of the episode. It's so many times during this review, the episode seems to end when I'm not even prepared for it to end. Right now, I was checking my recording limit to see if I was getting near the end of my time when, bang, we got the to be continued. So that's why I was looking way off to the corner there. All right, well, that's it for my reaction to the episode. Join me in a few seconds and I'll give you my review. I'll watch this episode two more times and watch some reviews on YouTube and read some commentaries. So that'll give me a chance to put my thoughts together. And then I will give you what I think are the important parts and maybe some flaws of this episode. So join me in a second. Welcome back. I have now watched the episode for a total of 3 times, and I've read some reviews and listened to a couple podcasts. And so, my thoughts about the episode. One thing that was remarked upon in the 2 podcasts that I listened to was that this is a pretty unnecessary episode. The term that's become popular is bottle episode, and I believe it either comes from Lost or it comes from Breaking Bad. There is a famous episode, famous within the series of Breaking Bad, where the 2 main characters are stuck within the lab, and so everything happens in that episode within the lab, and nothing happens in that episode that affects the overall arc of the season. And these episodes used to be what every episode was almost in traditional TV because there was no continuity. And then there were series that kind of straddled that line and would have moments, usually it would either be a mid-season climax or the season climax would change the status quo. But for the most part, you could turn on the show and count upon the fact that the episode would be a bottle episode. Something like Friends, which would tweak the status of the characters throughout the season. Characters would lose a job in one episode or maybe break up with someone. But for the most part, each episode was a bottle episode. That was traditional TV. They were telling stories for 24 episodes in a season. And the easiest way to retain the audience was to not get them hung up with continuity. So if they missed one week, they could come back the next week and not feel like they were missing anything of the story. It was easier to assign writing tasks. If one writer fell behind during the pre-production phase, you could just shuffle where that episode is. But now that we have this world of 10 episode seasons, and people, if they miss an episode, just go to their streaming provider and can easily catch the next episode without having to catch it during the week. They can wait 2 weeks. They can watch everything in one day. It's all at their leisure. It changes how shows are written. And so one consequence, not only is the bottle episode gone, but we also lose inconsequential scenes. And for the good and for the ill, the shows are tighter. That's the good part of it. There's also more consistency. Whether that means it's consistently bad or consistently good, that's your judgment. But the series can maintain a mark. And if you like the series, because there are only 10 episodes, it's easier for the showrunner to maintain that same standard. And so I think for the better, it means the quality is higher. But one negative is because there are no toss-away scenes or toss-away moments, you can begin to put more weight on each individual scene and sequence, and nothing is going to be inconsequential. So if a character has a random scene with a character you've never seen before, you can begin to predict you'll see that character again. And so in some ways, it can be easier to predict what happens in these shows. Now, when you get these inconsequential episodes, or you get scenes like my boy Pen Pen, who we see again and again, has not had any consequence on the plot. When they do have surprises and twists that build upon something that happened earlier in the season, there's a greater chance it's a surprise because there are so many inconsequential moments. When one of those does pay off, you're not really going to predict that it's going to happen. And there's also more room for character moments because not every scene has to propel the plot. You can have scenes that are truly only for character building. And so in a way, this is a character episode. And I think the 2 characters that benefit most from this episode are Asuka here and also Mitsuko. And we see that Mitsuko is willing to toss away her own life. She's willing to toss away the life of the others in NERV. And fundamentally, she's willing to sacrifice Asuka over Shinji. since she's the one that makes the decision to send Asuka into the volcano rather than Shinji. She's saying in a way that for this mission, she's willing to let Asuka die in this pickup of an embryo of an angel, and not willing to let Shinji die doing it. She would rather keep Shinji in reserve. She feels Shinji is more irreplaceable, and his Eva, him and his angel Eva, are pieces on the board she doesn't want to dispose of. And we see that Asuka is willing to put herself into danger and not really see that consequence. So that says a lot about her psychology, that maybe she has a little bit of narcissism to her and a neediness at her core, because she's unwilling to see negative consequences happening to her. And while she puts up a front of not being needy in any way, there's the scene where she's at the pool with Shinji, and at the end she's like, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me, before she dives into the pool. She does need that validation. And so we see that that tough exterior is not impenetrable. It is maybe, I won't say paper thin, but it's thin enough that it can be pierced. And so I like it. Now, I do see why it got that lower review, that 7.3 or 7.5 on IMDb. The review is 7.6, which actually, it's okay. It's not great. But comparison to some of the other episodes, I'm guessing people gave it the lower score for being a bottle episode, and being, for them, I guess they felt it was kind of pointless. There is kind of an issue with pacing too. We don't get real tension in the episode till about the last third. But because there's some character scenes, I personally don't mind it. I'm also one of those that doesn't mind the first half of season 3 of Stranger Things for the same reason. I just like those character moments. So that's my final thought. Again, because it's a bottle episode, we can't really talk about development of plot. The only thing that moved forward a little bit was that we saw what's his head. It appears that he is a spy. We're not really sure for whom at this point in time. He's a spy for Gendo within within Nerve. He's working inside Nerve, spying on Nerve for Gendo, as far as we can tell. And then he appears to be spying for someone else. And by he, I'm referring to, here I'm going to my iPhone for my notes for these other characters I have difficulty remembering. I am talking about Ryoji. Ryoji appears to be a spy, but for maybe it says, and I didn't catch it, but he does appear to be a spy for someone. That was the only real plot development I saw. Unless the angel we saw in this episode is developed, the idea that embryo is somehow developed later, then there is a second thing that is developed in this episode. But for the most part, a bottle episode. And those are my thoughts on this episode of Neon Genesis Evangelion. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you'll join me again, if not for Neon Genesis Evangelion, then for another review on my channel. That's all for now. Take care and be well.